Tech Innovators.
Hello. Welcome
Hello.
to Age Tech Innovators, the podcast where we explore how technology is transforming the way we care for aging populations. I'm Monty, your host, and each week we chat with inspiring leaders who are making a real difference in the lives of older adults, sharing innovations and ideas that help support and uplift those who need it most. Join us as we work together to build a brighter, more caring future for everyone. So now, let's dive in. I'm with Anders. What a pleasure to have you today. I know we've had a lot of amazing conversations. I'm sure today will be one of those. So Anders, run me through who you are and what you do in 60 seconds.
Very happy to be here, Monty, and nice to get to sit down and chat with you a little bit. So my name is Anders Gränsmark, and I'm the head of sales on Skyresponse, a Swedish software company developing alarm monitoring platforms for care, facility management, and personal safety. I've been at Skyresponse for almost 3 years now, and I have a background within software for the last 17 years. So very new to the tech industry, to be honest. I'm more on the software side, which aligns very good with what we do at Skyresponse, basically.
Well, it's great to have you. When you mentioned you've been in the tech industry for about 3 years, what inspired you to enter this industry? And what was your story in starting to support people with technology?
I mean, I would say I came in this industry a little bit of we have a Swedish saying where you basically slip on a banana shell. So it was just by coincidence, I would say. So one of my former colleagues joined Skyresponse about 5-6 years ago, and they were in need of someone on key account management. And he said, okay, maybe you can talk to this guy. I used to work with him. I think he could be a good fit. So that was my first way in to Skyresponse. And then obviously when I got introduced, I found it fascinating to be a part of something that is so technology driven, but with such an instant impact, because this is used by real people in real life instead of basically developing things that you never see how they are used, or you can't connect the value more maybe and then in amusement or in finance or whatever it might be. But here is basically we're doing something for the real world and the people who actually use it on a daily basis. So I would say that has been the most inspiring finding over these years, that we actually do things that has an impact on the world.
Do you have any specific examples of when you first saw how your technology that you're developing has an impact on people that you're supporting? Do you have any specific stories about maybe anything that stands out?
Yeah, it could be. There are many of them, and also to answer that. So from the Skyresponse perspective, I mean, we're a business-to-business company, right? So we don't really get to be with the end user in that sense. So we have a partner or a reseller, or what we call them solution providers that use our technology as part of their solution to the market, and they get to see the real impact of the services in that sense. But we see on our end is how we with software create different way of working. We create, I would say 90% of my job is change management, because what we bring to the table is quite different. If you look on to how the tech industry has been doing the previous, 40, 50 years. I mean, we were founded in 2012, so we were digital from the start. So we don't have that background in Skyresponse in that sense of doing all the analogs and all that. So that has been something we've been able to adapt to in order to be on the market where we are today. But we started on the digital aspect and also started as, and still is, a pure software company. So you get to see the impact on how our users are using the services and how it makes their life easier. And that goes all the way from the service user living at home or in a care home or whatever it might be, but also for the staffs and how they manage stuff and the labor and the efficiencies and all that. So we have so many examples on how we save time and money and cost just by using the software the way it should be used. And adding automations and whatever it might be. So I would say that there's so many cases. I don't really have a specific one, but yeah, on a daily basis, it's all the time, to be honest.
And you're in a really interesting position because, as you say, you started digital. You began with a digital product, which means that you're already ahead of seeing how technology can be used, not just currently, but in the future, and how it can be adapted and support people as we see a growing need for these solutions. If we look forward over the next 10 years, 20 years, what key opportunities do you see for innovation in this space?
It depends on the way you look at it. I mean, you can look at it from a technical perspective and saying that there are so many things we can do with all the technology that's being developed and have been for some time now. I mean, for me, the digitalization has been around for a long time, but we probably need a little bit like the industrial revolution, because we have all the stuff around the digital, but we are not using it the way we could. So I would say that one of the major things we believe will be driving going forward is the level of automations, for example. I mean, we have all the data, and for a long time we had people looking at the data and analyzing the data, and now that is moving to now we have a machine that is looking at the data and analyzing the data. And that machine will probably also tell us what we will do with the data and so on and so on. So the biggest innovation that I can see at the moment is that we change the way we actually use it and the way we work. And that can be all the way from someone on the field, a caregiver, for example, or someone just building services to the market. What will we do with all the data we have? How can we provide better services? How can we reduce the costs? How can we create more efficiencies, etc., etc.? So I think that is the biggest innovation, that it needs to adapt to what we're facing on the actual market or the real world. We don't have enough people in this business. There are too many costs around personnel and staff, and the labor is too high, and we can't find staff and so on. Okay, then we need to start to think, how can technology reduce the amount of repeated tasks or administration or whatever it might be that doesn't really bring any value, but it's still needed. So if you look on the upcoming 5-10 years, short term, I think that is where the biggest change is going to happen, that we will implement more tools supporting us to do what's actually most important. So that is my take on what needs to be innovated over time, basically.
It's so interesting to hear that it's maybe not so much a tech solution or a massive increase in new tech solutions. It's more about the actual utilization of those current solutions in a more innovative way.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, no one will never know what will happen technology-wise within 5-10 years, because we're living a ever-changing business all the time. I mean, the technology today, if it's new today, it's old tomorrow. That's just the way it is. And I think coming from a software perspective, where both Skyresponse is and where I'm from, that's something we're used to. It's changing all the time, and it's not only market requirements, it's also how things are developed in terms of how we write the code or the tools we use and all. So it's changing so fast. And I think the challenge is not just to adapt to the technology itself, it's just how can we innovate the services we need to deliver. I mean, there are so many examples of councils, or if you look in the Nordics, municipalities and so on, if they would need to take care of the aging population the same way they're doing today, almost every municipality in Sweden will need to file for bankruptcy, because we don't have the money to provide the care homes or the money to provide services as we do today for another 50 years. So we need to use technology to change how we provide the services and how we work with those who are in need of care. So I think that I'm more curious around that innovation than what type of features and cool stuff will bring in the market, because I think that is where the biggest change is needed.
That's really interesting. What's so great is that you have such an overview of how technology is being used in multiple countries. So you're based over in Sweden, and I know you're doing a lot of work in the UK as well. What do you see Sweden or the Nordics do very well that other countries could think of and to maybe take a page from that book?
We have many good examples and we have many not so good examples, if you ask me. But I think, since obviously if we compare it to UK, Sweden did the digitalization journey back in 2014 somewhere. So we already done that leap in terms of, okay, we don't have any analog left. We don't need to take that into consideration. The country itself has been very heavily investing in infrastructure. So people here are used to have broadband and fiber internet and all that everywhere, because that's just how Sweden and the Nordics, I would say, work. So we've come very far on being digital in that sense. And what that brings us is, of course, that it brings us more and more to the same standards on how things should work. When we talk about communications, for example, we see that more and more manufacturers and hardware manufacturers, they use the same kind of communication protocols and so on. And because that's just like a base. Over here, almost everything is Skype, for example. Very easy in that sense. So that has given a lot of the first step building the way forward. Okay, now we have everything digital, and what do we do with it? So we've been used to work with data for a long time, collecting data and analyzing data. And there are many instances in the Nordics that use that data on a very good basis. So they use it for sharing between regional hospital services and the councils taking care of the local care and so on, so they can share information and so on. Norway is an amazing example of that, how it's led by the government. So what they've done is that they've basically built a welfare technology hub where all the different kinds of instances is integrating. So if you have a care home in Norway, you are able to get all the historical data on that actual care. So they have a data sharing mindset. So they can follow a individual from, okay, they are living at home, they're starting to show some abnormal behaviors that might end up in them needing care. So we can follow an individual from basically before they get even ill or in need of assistance, and then see how the behavior changes over time and follow the journey all the way into the care home and so on. Yeah. But that are good examples on how it can be used and how some of the countries are using it in the Nordics. But we also have a lot of challenges. So in Sweden, for example, it's divided on who owns the data. So in Sweden, we have regionals areas that run all the hospital services. And then we have like the municipality areas who run all the care homes and all that. And they don't have a natural way of sharing that data, for example. So there are many of those things that still lack, so to say. And I think that is some of the things that is crucial on, okay, how can we provide a better service? Because we probably need to understand much earlier to predict this might be someone who might need some assist going forward. And then again, we've been implementing a lot of technology over time. We've been doing a lot on the different kind of welfare check-ins and vital signs and so on. But just like everywhere else, the technology exists, but it's how it's used that's the challenge. Because if you go out on a care home, for example, who will be the one looking into all these things? It's a different kind of competence needed compared to being just a nurse, for example. The nurses, they are doing amazing jobs on what they're supposed to do, but they are not IT or data driven individuals, because that's not their background. They haven't been educated for that. So that is also one of the things we see it change, and it takes a long time, but we see it changing in terms of that there's a much better understanding that we also need different type of resources to be able to provide the services, not only a nurse or a doctor, or there are so many more individuals involved and different kind of expertise and different kind of backgrounds. And I think that is what's changing the most. So the care industry, at least in if you look on where we are, in the tech space with alarm management and so on, it's changing and it's setting different requirements on what resources we actually need in here. Because now it's not only handling in alarms, it's also about being predictive and making decisions and following an individual and so on and so on. So yeah, we have some interesting examples in the Nordics where we've been quite far ahead, but we also see it's coming in UK. I mean, we're very heavily involved up in Scotland, and they have a lot of great initiatives on how they think around that. And I think it has to come from the top. It has to come from, government or something like that. Okay, this is how we would like to work with the data, and this is how we can use it, basically.
So I think the listeners would be really interested in hearing a little bit about your work in Scotland. So you've got a project called the Shared Arc, which is, and I'll let you explain it in a better way than I do, but I think, as you said, innovation can only be driven from the top. So how did you kick this off? How did you actually make this not just an idea, but into a real thing, the Shared Arc?
To be honest, everything around the background and the initiatives, I don't know too much about it, but we have, as we are a part of it now and been since basically they did the new kind of tender for it. But the idea came from that Scotland, and they have an instance or an organization called the Digital Office that is focusing on digitalization, basically, up in Scotland. And they had an idea that instead of doing a normal framework kind of tender where we say, okay, we would put together a framework where all the councils and those can use for the tender process and buy equipment and so on. We would change it a little bit and say, okay, we are in need of a software instead of just a partner or solution provider, whatever you want to call it. So they had an idea that, okay, if we have a software that can support the shared arc, meaning that we can work with aggregating data from every single individual arc in Scotland to higher instances, we can get a better understanding on our citizens in general. So not only by arc, but it's a shared aggregated data. So, and
sorry, just to jump in, but is this just talking back to your last thought, which is about what is really needed is a way to share data more effectively? Is this one of the reasons why you've progressed with this project, is because you see that this is how the future will be, which is a centralized data sharing platform?
We believe so. We were participating in the tender together with our partner Chubb, just like every other who was in that tender, and they had a lot of requirements and requests, and they've been doing a really good job on explaining in details what they needed. So we went for it, and then luckily we won it. And I would say, we're still in what they call the early adopters phase at this point. So we have a lot of the early adopters who are like, yes, we would like to go with this. We are getting close to the second phase now. But in parallel, together with that, they also ask very much for, it needs to be innovation. It needs to be something that is continuously developing. We need to be able to add services over time or add technology and so on. And we have that as a part in our DNA as a platform and how we do our software. So bringing in new kind of way of workings or automations, integrations, supporting different technologies has been a quite natural part for us for a long time. And for Scotland, that has seemed to be a really good fit, because they have not only thinking, oh, okay, we are doing analog to digital, which is not, a one-to-one switch, if you being quite frank. But it's after the one-to-one switch, that's when everything happens. Once you're digital, then you can actually start to add in all these things. And I think that is when the value comes, because again, technology in itself, it's not worth anything. It's how it's used and the use case for it. That's the important part. So I think that has been something that digital office has been a really good driver on to keep innovating and to keep adding things in, and also understand what kind of services do we want to be able to bring out to our service users throughout the country. What would they need, and how can we interact more with them living at home, and so on and so on. So I think they are very heavily involved in how, and we found out that we are a very good match. So we on the Skyresponse side are involved in a lot of different innovations outside just the alarm receiving center solutions, which has been fantastic so far.
So and Skyresponse has a lot of partners to it, and you mentioned that we're really in, at least in the UK, this transition from analog to digital, and the exciting stuff happens once we're actually digital. And you've been digital over in the Nordics for nearly over 10 years now. What partners do you work with in the Nordics that have not been able to be introduced into the UK because of this digital or analog to digital switch?
To be honest, not too many. Since we are digital and the partners using us and customers using our solutions in UK can benefit from those kinds of partners we already have, because they support the digital platform and all that. So what we have been doing, I mean, we decided that we wanted to go for the UK market and try to actually build something there 4 years ago now. And I mean, the first 2.5, almost 3 years has been trying to catch up, because UK is very different from Nordics, to be honest, in the way you work and the way the solution has been on the market. So we've been working on, okay, what are the things we need, and what are the things that we need to have in our system in order to support the way you're working and so on. So that has been a big catch up. I would say that we are there now, and I say that and that's just to support what's on the market.
Yeah.
And what we on the other side then also bring into the market is all those kinds of things in terms of, we would like to do, I don't know, it could be anything from remote night watch cameras, sensors, radars, or whatever. And we have all those integrated. And if they are using the Skyresponse platform, we combine both the original telecare hub, the analog device, sending a social care alarm to us, but also adding on the camera as well. And you combine it on the same service user, because we do all the transformation on the protocols from the old analog to get it in. And then we add in, if there is a need, a device that someone might need for night checks or whatever it is.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say it hasn't been any partner that we haven't been able to bring. What we see, though, is that there is a lot of innovations in UK in terms of, I don't know, mobile safety alarms or stuff like that, who also would like to work together with us, and we would like to work together with them, just as we're discussing and working with you guys. So we believe that the partnerships and have that open kind of ecosystem or open platform to say, yes, we are happy to work with any type of device or any type of IoT solution or whatever it is. I think that is when the real power comes out of it, because we figured quite early that care needs to be individual. We can build a solution that can be one size fits all for everyone, which will probably cover 95% of the use cases. But the other 5%, what do you do with those?
Yeah.
And for us, that is, doesn't really matter. You can do the 95%. And if you have those 5 where you need to do something different, then you just do that.
Yeah.
So that's why we believe it's so important to have all those kinds of integrated hardwares and softwares and all that. So we can handle the deviations on the use cases, or if there is a specific need for 1 out of 100, fine, go ahead.
And you may be able to, you may not want to say this because it might be some of your secret sauce, but as head of sales, what are some initiatives that you've seen have been surprisingly effective in terms of selling within this market?
I
Or
wouldn't
even,
call it secret. No, I wouldn't call it that it's a secret sauce. I mean, obviously, I'm going to be a bit partial around this because I'm on the Skyresponse side. But I think one of the major refreshments is, of course, that what we try to do, and what I believe we also do, is that we are changing from technology decides how you work to technology supports the way of working. So it's vice versa, meaning that instead of saying, okay, this is the solution you have, so this is the way you have to work, because this is how everything works. We believe it in the other end, say, okay, but technology should work for you. So that has been quite refreshing, if you ask me. And then again, I'm not very experienced in the tech industry, but that's why I see being in a lot of meetings and meeting a lot of partners and a lot of end customers and a lot of different, everything from assisted living or warden calls to traditional ARCs or nursing homes. So I think that has been the most refreshing, that the ones using the solution actually gets to have a little bit of a control, or maybe a little bit of a say on how they want it to work, and a little bit of, okay, yeah, but we want to use this and this. Or no, we would like to do these things, but also this. So they have the freedom of choice, basically, instead of being, I wouldn't say limited, but instead of saying, okay, this is what we have and we can't do too much more with it. Here comes a little bit of, okay, here you can do pretty much everything you want. That is a challenge itself. But still, I think that has been quite refreshing. And I also think, I mean, we have colleagues in this business and competitors in business that are doing a lot of great things. And I think what I believe, at least, and what I've seen the last, since I started, is that the tech industry is moving a bit more to becoming more on a software side than just the actual hardware. And I think that is a good thing. Hardware is so much the enabler, and we can't do anything without it. But software is then also what actually is doing all the smartness and all the, whatever you want to bring into it. And I think that is refreshing in this business. And I think also that is why we so far have been able to get quite good response on the market. I mean, we've not been in UK so long, and now we believe it flies pretty well, and we have a good feeling going forward.
Yeah.
In many cases.
So you've talked a lot about how we're seeing a transition, or you mentioned about how we're seeing a transition from the emphasis on purely hardware, which is probably because of the fact everything was analog, to now the emphasis being more on software analyzing, software being smarter, but still being enabled by the hardware. What do you think is going to happen to the businesses and organizations that aren't adopting this software headfirst mindset and are still holding on to what is potentially just the hardware aspect of their service offering?
Like in everything, especially around technology, I would say it's a little bit the adapt or die kind of situation we're up in. And that is not unique for the tech industry. I mean, everywhere. I mean, just go back to the classic Nokia Ericsson versus the first iPhone, or when internet came and all that. I mean, you need to follow. Otherwise, it's you will end up not being relevant anymore. And if you can't stay relevant, it's going to be very hard to both win business if you're on that side, meaning to win new customers and contracts because the demands and the requirements are changing. But it's also going to be very hard to keep up in general. So I think that is just how the market is. It's probably like that in all the businesses. Again, if you look on the hardware today, there are so many hardwares who have the software built in. They already have all the AIs and smartness built in. So they are adding the software as an aspect of the actual hardware. There is AIs and stuff and smart things in cameras that's just built in the actual hardware from the beginning. So I believe that will be the biggest part of it, to understand the value of the software, regardless if you have a normal telecare device, or if you're like us and alarm receiving, talking with 1,000 devices on a daily business. But I still believe that software is where the logic will be, because it's ever changing and it's almost every time instant. It's, at least if you're running some type of a cloud solution or anything like that, it's real time. So
Yeah.
if I want to make a change now, I do it now and I click on the button and it's an instant change. And I think that is how we're used as normal citizens. I mean, in my daily life or in your daily life, that is just how the world is. And I mean, I look at my dad now. He's turning 75 this year. He's a perfectly normal, fully healthy guy. And technology is a huge part of his life. And we already seen this for a long time. And we will see it a lot more. Becoming older and living in the area of technology, or in the time of technology as we are now, where it's so involved in our consumer-based kind of living, they will expect that. Why would I need to put in some other device in order to get assistant? I have a smart speaker already. I can ask Alexa and she will probably send someone and so on. So I think it's important to understand that technology is such a massive part on our daily lives. And I mean, I'm in my 50s. I'm not too old yet, or not too young either. And when I'm getting older and need assist, I would expect that I would feel independent and I would live independently, and I will have technology in my home that will support the need I have.
That actually was so to expand upon that, one of my questions, which is a surprise question on the podcast, is if suddenly you forwarded time by 50 years or 60 years, 70 years, and you wake up and you look at your body and you're an elderly man, what technology would you like to use, and how would you like to live independently? What would you use to stay as active as possible? Blue sky thinking, the devices may not even exist.
No, probably not. You probably drink something and everything is measured. Anyway, I think that is the big thing. I mean, everyone wants to be able to be as independent as possible. I mean, that's just like a normal right we have as human beings. So I think technology will be integrated everywhere, but it will not be you will not even realize that it is. It's just there. It's not maybe so many devices, or we need to put a camera here or something. It's probably in a normal light bulb instead, or you have it built in some of your chairs, or you still use your Google Home or whatever. And I think that is, and we also see that now. We have some projects up both in Scotland and we see in Germany where we actually have Alexa as a part of the care service. So they use Alexa to have the digital engagement, so they can ask about the weather and they can ask about, what's on my agenda and so on. But they can also ask I need help to get dressed, and that will actually trigger someone to come and help them. So we are already there where we start to see consumer products as a part of the actual tech industry. And I think that's the way forward. I mean, because technology is just like that. It's a part of our daily lives. We use it every day, everywhere.
So it's not so much about technology. It won't be so much about technology for elderly people. It's just technology for care and for living, which is what telecare even stands for. But I think there's been a bit of an emphasis on telecare, which is around elderly people. So my last question today is, we see that this is a growing sector. There's new innovations. There's lots of gaps. What would you say to our listeners right now who are considering joining this sector but don't know what to do? As in, do you have any encouraging advice you would offer those who are considering a career or building a business in this space?
I mean, I actually spent some time thinking about that one and went back to myself. I mean, I've been here now for almost 3 years, and I get to think a little bit, okay, what is the stuff that I enjoy the most? And I mean, it's a fairly simple answer, and I would say the biggest appreciation on my end is that you you really get to be involved in something that is truly valuable for people. And I think that is what it's all about, to be honest. You actually get to work or do services for people. And when you think a little bit around that, I mean, because again, the technology space we're in is for people. And I think that is also that's a part of who we are as a species or whatever. I mean, we work with people. And I think that is the most or the highest appreciation from my end being in this industry, that you feel that you are in something that is giving an instant value and that is actually helping people in real life. So that is the biggest encouragement. And then again, like you said, the innovation, if you really like to be part of something that is developing and where we don't have all the answers, we have no idea what's going to happen in 5 years, to be honest. That is also very, very, it makes me feel very excited.
Yeah, I'm going to pop this whenever I feel emotionally tired. I'm going to listen to this last 2 minutes of this podcast. Or whenever I feel like my motivation is lacking, I'm going to listen to the last 2 minutes of this podcast. And it's been
nice.
Such a pleasure. Honestly, learned so much. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Monty.
Awesome. I'll catch up with you soon. Peace.
Peace.